Libra Sun and Rising. Welcome to your June 2022 Astro Update. It's Raina here. And so we start the month with Mercury going direct in a very deep area for you, the 8th house. Mercury went retrograde on May 10th in your 9th house in fellow air sign Gemini, and eventually went back into Taurus, that 8th house, and now is direct there. Now the 8th house and the 9th house have a common thread of spirituality with them. What I like to say is that the 8th house is more of metaphysical, or what we would call spiritual pursuits, and the 9th house is more of the organized religion, the doctrines, the dogma, the philosophies. And so it's the 8th house being Scorpio's domain and being a water house, to me, is much more of a fluid kind of a thing. And Scorpio is also a place that is quite secretive. The shadow self, the what we call the taboos in society and things like that. And so it's a very interesting place to have Mercury retrograde, because it can make a person very reflective of these kinds of matters, but also this is a great time for research. So I don't know if any of you are just like studying, going back into some kind of delving into something again that has an esoteric or occult theme. And astrology and the tarot would be in this area as well. So an example would be someone who perhaps has come from a more traditional religion and is kind of maybe you've been dealing with astrology or some other metaphysical studies, but you haven't quite made up your mind yet, and you find more comfort through that than the traditional belief systems that you followed. Sorry, I can't say traditional. So it's a very interesting thing. And there could be something also with money that is shared between you and other people, because the 9th house, it's very interesting. You rule the 7th house, and that can be legal matters. So if it's an actual case that's on the docket, it might be the 7th house. But if you're kind of going over with a lawyer, some kind of legal maneuver, then it might involve the 9th house, where it's actually taking a look at the law to see if something can be done. So that might have some kind of connection. The 8th house is a money house, shared resources, and it can also involve inheritance matters. And so Mercury goes direct on the 3rd, and then the very next day we have a Saturn retrograde. And because Saturn is not a personal planet, this does not impact the green light portal, which will be opening up when Mercury comes out of its shadow around, I think it's the 17th or the 18th of June. So that's going to be a time in mid-June when it's really great for launches. And until then, for the first half of the month, you may also feel that kind of tying up loose ends vibe. And part of this is because the sun's going to go into cardinal sign when it goes into Cancer on the solstice, the 21st. So that's that kind of forward-moving energy. You are a cardinal sign as well, Libra, and all the 4 seasons are represented by cardinal signs. So it can indicate that things are kind of rocking and rolling, whereas they may have been, a little bit quieter, more quiet for a while. So when Saturn goes retrograde on the 4th, it'll be at 25 degrees of Aquarius. Now that is the air sign that is coming after you. So it's going to be in the 5th house. So Saturn has been in your 5th house, a house that is about love and is an area. I've always thought that, I don't know about Libra itself because Taurus is ruled by Venus, but that Venus should be the ruler of the 5th house instead of the sun. But the sun is a ruler, and Leo is the ruler of the 5th house because it is the house of creativity, including children, creating children, but also the house of love. And so Saturn in this 5th house has made some Libra people rather serious about this subject. Libra is a sign that tends to be quite lighthearted and, kind of operating above the fray emotionally, being an air sign. And so when Libra is dealing with matters of the heart, you don't really want something that is very intense. Usually, well, I say usually because some of you Sun and Libras have Scorpio inner planets, and you can have the moon in any sign, and if you have the moon in any of the water signs, you may be more likely to crave emotional relationships. I mean, where it's expressed outwardly. But the typical Libra person is detached and romantic at the same time. And it's kind of an interesting combination, to say the least. And it's pretty funny because it can get Libra people into some very drama-filled situations, to be quite honest. I was thinking about this actor, and I can't think of his name, but he was very handsome. And I think he is a Libra. He was, and I haven't heard from him, but I'm not reading the tabloids anymore anyway. But this guy, I found out he had been married like 4 times, something like that. And he wasn't that old. And I thought to myself, my God, how can people do that when it's so hard the first time to get involved in all these relationships? I don't know if he has kids or anything like that. But again, I don't even know what his name is. And I doubt I've seen him in anything. But this was like 10 years ago. Maybe some of you know who I'm talking about. He has dark hair. I don't know how old he is now. Probably not enough information to go on. But yeah, so but basically what I'm trying to say here about Saturn being transiting your 5th house is that some of you guys who are single may have been very atypical in your approach towards love, and you're much less interested in frivolous romantic dalliances and more interested in the long term, because that's what Saturn represents. Plus, Saturn is serious. Also, during this during this time frame of the Saturn transit in Aquarius, which I think has been ongoing for approximately, a year and a half or so, you have the possibility of perhaps having someone, meeting someone who is a love interest who is either a Capricorn or an Aquarius, because I don't know how many people know this, but Aquarius is ruled not only by Uranus but also by Saturn. So Aquarians can be called Saturn ruled too. And so that might be somebody that comes into your life. And even Capricorn, even though Capricorn is so different from you, you're both cardinal signs and you form a square to one another, and that can be physical attraction. And sometimes that physical attraction can be quite irritating in other ways, but still compelling. So now that Saturn is retrograding here, there may be this, like if you, especially if you have met somebody and you're dating and you feel like this pressure to make it permanent, you may ease up on that because something perhaps comes up where you're not quite sure if this is the one. And it's very important to be discerning because one of the things that can happen when you have this placement is that you may be kind of so interested in settling down that you just choose somebody, especially if they seem kind of Capricorn-esque, where they seem very together and responsible, that kind of thing. But they might be not really your type. And because you're so focused on maybe starting a family or having this life partner, you may choose the wrong person. So just be careful about that. So something may come up that has that theme attached to it in some way. Mercury goes back into Gemini on the 13th, and so it is going to be in that ninth house. Now, another facet of the ninth house is long distance travel. So if something got postponed for you, maybe you had trouble with a passport, Libra. It's on, baby. You're going to get to go. Well, I always say possibly. I always kind of use weasel words because, nobody can really predict these things. But anyway, Mercury's coming back up to full strength, and that can make all of us feel like we're progressing, because it's almost like a holding pattern when you have this, a personal planet retrograding, where we feel this sense of like waiting for things to get back to normal. On the 14th, the next day, we have a full moon at 23 degrees of Sagittarius. This is a friendly angle called a sextile to Libra, and that is in the third house of communication. The third house is also training, acquiring skills, I should say. And this can be some kind of skill as it pertains to you doing something for career purposes. But, in Sagittarius, if we just look at it in terms of the sign itself, this can even be some philosophical download or spiritual download that has to do with the way that you view life itself. And again, one thing I want to mention or reiterate that connects to the eighth house is that because Taurus is your eighth house, Uranus is in the eighth house, transiting the eighth house. And it is going to expose Libra people to very unusual beliefs. Like I said, the eighth house is about metaphysics, but there's a certain segment of metaphysics called galactic information that is something that, as somebody who has been in this, interested in this thing for almost 40 years, in this certain genre of metaphysical studies, only came into my reality in recent years. And it's really heating up. Obviously, it still probably is a very small segment of society as a whole that is exploring this, but you may be some of them. And the reason that this is so important is I've realized something is that a lot of the traditional religious doctrine that I mentioned the ninth house can be specifically connected to is not particularly relevant to me in terms of, offering what we would call a lot of benefits. Although Eastern religion, it feels like it is aligned, and it has been with me for many years. But the traditional Western religions haven't really enthused me very, very much, and the even metaphysical concepts sometimes they tend to be not as meaningful as I would like them to be. But one of the things that has really captured my interest is this idea of us beyond just souls or physical bodies, but as galactic beings that maybe have existed on other star systems, that, it kind of transcends just the Earth. And it opens things up a lot more. And so if some of you have gotten into these concepts, it's there's like this quantum vibe to it that really is quite expansive, and I think that's what is so appealing to me. And so the point being that the full moon in Sagittarius can make you aware of how we, even with religious beliefs, sometimes we've been controlled and indoctrinated. It's funny, the word doctrine and indoctrinated, there you go. And so Sag is all about truth and about freedom. And this may make you aware of that. And also even with your love life, if you're somebody who's in a marriage that is not or the equivalent type of committed relationship, and it really isn't serving you, or if you're single and you want a relationship quite badly, but you don't seem to have a partner who really honors you on multiple levels, then something may come to you where you realize who you really are as a sovereign soul, meaning that you're free and you don't need anyone. You can desire a relationship, but you don't need it. And that is a very important distinction. On the 21st, like I said, the sun goes into Cancer. Now, this is an area that is your career sector. And so you're going to start to have these triggers to your career sector, and that could possibly lead to new developments in this area. It's also the area of what we would call the your reputation, your reach in a public sense, and so that could be enhanced. The next day, on the 22nd, Venus goes into Gemini, into that ninth house, and Venus in the ninth house, if somebody is traveling, they may meet somebody that's a love interest. It also can mean love with somebody from a different culture, a different heritage, ethnicity, race, things like that. The ninth house is very international, is very open-minded, broad-minded, so all of that good stuff. On the 28th, the new moon at 7 degrees of Cancer in the 10th house of career. So new developments with career. For some people, this can even involve a new direction in career. This new moon is an earlier degree of Cancer, so there may be, especially if you have had some kind of new career recently, you're exploring even more of that. The different possibilities within one career. And again, any kind of training credentials that you have got can be applied to this new direction, if that's what you have already been kind of all about. On the same day, Neptune goes retrograde at 25 degrees of Pisces, and this for you is the 6th house. And this is another indication of Libra going in a different direction, perhaps career-wise, because this can be something of a more spiritual nature, where you are serving other people in that capacity, or it could even be artistic careers. And career is assigned to the 10th house. The 6th house is your service to others, otherwise known as work. And so it is the nature of the work. And so with Neptune, it can be quite of that type of healing, the healing arts or the applied arts even. And Neptune has been in Pisces now for about a decade. You know, it's one of those generational planets, and it's not leaving this area anytime soon. So for some Libra people, this can be quite confusing for you, because you may have thought that you wanted to do one thing, and maybe you have found it to be unsatisfactory. And the Neptune retrograde can be quite disillusioning, because if you built it up in your mind, sometimes Neptune can give a person unrealistic expectations, but also very, what would you call it, like idealistic or overly idealistic tendencies. And when Neptune goes retrograde, the bloom is off the rose, or the curtain opens and you see the reality of the situation, and it's like, you know, I don't really like this. But the good thing is that it can make you more realistic, so that you can do what you have to do in a way that is very, very methodical. If you have to get more training, if you have to fine tune what it is that you want to do, and you kind of had too broad an idea, and now you have to explore something in a similar vein, but maybe not what you thought you wanted. You know, sometimes people think they want to be a teacher, but they really want to be an administrator, you know, things like that. So, anyway, I hope that you resonated with this, Libra. If you would like a personal reading, I'm promoting my double readings that are 2 full-length astrological readings. One of them is a chart reading that is analyzing your natal chart, the cosmic blueprint of when you were born, and the other reading is looking at important transits of the next 12 months. That's called my deep dive reading. I also have a combination tarot and chart reading as well, and that's called my whole enchilada reading. And I have standalone readings. You can find out more information at the link below. I'm at rainamoonastrology.com. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye.